What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Today I wanted to make a shorter video, but one that serves a very important purpose, and that is the common mistakes new growers make when they're first starting to get into collecting carnivorous plants. And you could argue that tenured growers, if you were experienced growers, make the same mistakes sometimes as well. So what am I talking about? So you're just starting into getting into carnivorous plants. You've heard people say that they're difficult to grow. The reality is they're not. However, there's a caveat to that, and that caveat is they do require specific care depending on what it is you're growing. And so what am I beating around the bush about? The first things new growers do is they tend to buy plants because they appeal as being cool to them. And while that's a great thing, it cannot be the only thing that you do. And so what do I mean by that? So they will tend to buy like a Darlingtonia because they think, man, Darlingtonia is cool looking. It's a cobra lily. It is awesome name, awesome plant. But they have not done the research to see if they are able to care for it. So it is important, step one, that you learn what these plants, how these plants rather live in the wild. You want to understand their ecosystem and their way of life, so that way you can emulate that to the best of the ability for their greatest success. A lot of people will buy Darlingtonia, I'll use that as an example, or then maybe they'll buy a Nepenthes, not thinking about the long terms, and so they're not able to give the care that those plants need. For example, if you're growing Nepenthes outside, but you live somewhere that's extremely arid and dry and blazing hot, you're going to want to buy specific Nepenthes, not just the ones that appeal to you. So the first piece of advice I would give is make sure you do research and understand how these plants grow in the wild. After all, what we're trying to do is emulate their environment in a cultivation type of atmosphere. The next thing people do is they tend to buy carnivorous plants without really thinking about the long term. Just like any plants, but specifically carnivorous plants, you want to think about, can you care for these plants long term? The majority of the plants you will buy are going to be small, and so they're going to come home, fit comfortably anywhere you put them, but they will get very large. For instance, Nepenthes can get extremely large, and so you need to think that through before you start collecting them, whether or not or you'll be able to handle them full size. Now, if you're just growing one or two, you could probably get away with that, but if you want to have a collection, then you need to remember that they do require long-term care. And what does that look like for you? The third thing would be, are you going to be able to take care of these plants in any situation? And what do I mean by that? So let's say you start collecting, I'll stick with Nepenthes. Now, Nepenthes need to stay consistently moist. But what happens a lot of times is new growers will start developing a collection, and then next thing you know, they got to go on a business trip, or they got to go on vacation with the family, and then they're kind of stuck in an aw crap situation, right? And so you want to make sure that you plan ahead and understand what care they'll need consistently, and what are you going to do to ensure that you can provide that level of care long term. Now, this sounds convoluted, maybe even difficult, but it's not. Just take a little time to understand what they'll need and then plan out how you'll be able to provide that. The next thing you want to do, and a common mistake I see growers make, is they tend to give the plants the care they think they need and not the care they actually need. So what do I mean by that? Well, people will tend to try to grow Venus flytraps where it's not as bright because they think it's extremely hot to me, therefore it must be problematic for the plant. Sarracenia being the same way. It's important to understand, going back to the first point, that you understand how these plants grow and what care they need, and be able to provide that need for them. It's a long-term commitment. It's a great one and very rewarding, but it will only be rewarding if you meet the plant where it needs to be and not try to get it to meet you where you think it needs to be. The next point is a little subjective, but it's about worry. So carnivorous plants seem like they would be very delicate. They require specific care, and so people think that must mean that they are a breath away from dying at any point. And that could not be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, they are extremely hardy plants. And think about it this way, these plants, their entire survival, the only reason why they're even here is because instead of dying off a million different times over millions of years, they have evolved to be able to survive very harsh conditions. And so what I mean by that is don't fret. A lot of people tend to think this plant is turning black. What does that mean? Oh my gosh, that leaf is turning black. And so they tend to overreact. And these plants, a lot of them, just like most plants, don't really like to be messed with all that much. So once they're put down, they kind of want to stay the way they are. And what happens is people tend to love them to death, and they tend to overreact and move them and do all these things, and the plant never really gets a chance to settle in. Now, talking about the loving them to death, we have to understand that these plants are very unique, and with that comes a little bit of a sideshow attraction feel to them. And so specifically, we'll talk about Venus flytraps. People think, man, I've got to feed these plants, I got to feed them. They almost treat them as if they're animals. And so they want to feed them and feed them and feed them and feed them and mess with them and hit their traps, and they will literally love them to death. And so it's important to remember that these plants have been able to rely on themselves for many years. They're not animals, they are plants, and they are capable of doing a lot. Give them the care that they need, but don't over care for them, and don't over fret with them. Set them and let them do their thing. The next point is more of an intrinsic point rather than an actual impact to the plant. And it goes along the lines of worry. So a lot of new growers tend to very much worry about their carnivorous plants. And that's because they care and they want them to succeed. But the problem is when you have something that's supposed to be a hobby, it's supposed to be relaxing and a way for you to escape. And if you're consistently and constantly worried about the plant, you will get to the point where you just don't want to deal with that extra worry. These plants are to bring you joy. And so the way that you can harness and fix or remove that worry rather is do your research, make sure you understand the plant, make sure you understand that you can give it the care it needs, emulate that care, and sit back and enjoy. Lastly, and this was a fun one, is that carnivorous plants are addictive. I don't know many people that can just get one and be like, I think I'm done. I've known so many people that sort of wanted to dip their toe into a little bit, and next thing you know, they have a huge collection. So be warned, it is a very much addictive, but an amazing, rewarding hobby. I hope that these have been some good pointers for you. If you have any questions or any pointers of your own, please don't hesitate to comment on it and let me know, and I will be happy to help. As always, happy growing and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.